Hello, everyone. Chris Jacobs and Joanna Michaels here from The Lifting, here today with a very special guest, Tony Rodrigues. Like ourselves, Tony was subject to multiple hardships during his 20 and back experiences, including becoming a slave, both on Earth as well as within our solar system. We will let him explain further. But now I will tell you that this show is recorded on March 17th, 2019, and will air soon. So, Joanna, you want to go?
Oh, basically, Tony, we're so glad you're here with us today. We actually waited 2 years before really starting to talk about some of this stuff because for us at The Lifting, we're really big on people doing a lot of inner work and growth that needs to occur so that people aren't as influenced and as vulnerable as people have been in the past. So we waited, and just this past few months, we started bringing people on and having our own personal conversations about what happened in hopes that, it will help other people, because our personal understanding is that this hasn't just happened to a select few, it's happened to an unbelievable amount of people, and that people are going to start remembering things and not understand what's going on. So we're so grateful you're willing to come on today with us and talk about your story. So I'm just going to turn it over to you and let you talk for a bit.
Sure, thanks. I don't really go and shop. I don't really go and try to find people to do interviews. But whenever somebody asks me, I'm happy to explain everything I can. It seems that there are hundreds of people with the same kind of experience, but they're at different stages of remembering what happened to them. And many of them remembering just with most people, I think, just have an idea, a hunch. I think something happened. What happened? Something happened. And so when they hear my story or anybody else's that kind of goes into more depth of what could happen, then it's definitely something. Like, I remember back before I remembered everything, that it was important to me. And when I would find anything that had a shred, that was familiar from my own story, like I always remembered the original abduction. And so whenever I saw a story that had that, I was just glued. And even though it didn't explain my memories or bring out, hit it right on the head, but anything that was similar, I was very interested in. I get hundreds of people that are kind of in the same boat. They see my story and it reminds them of something similar that they remember, that they know is out of place, but they don't have most people don't have a ton of memories, you know what I mean, back. So they do a very good job of getting rid of your memories after they take people and use them. And the scope of the programs goes beyond just our earthly programs, just the governments here. It goes way beyond that. There are people can be taken from somebody from another species, from any given place in the cosmos. I think that they've really done a good job of conditioning us to believe that there's only a few different races, and if you did go into space, that it's still a very big place. You can't get very far. The truth is that any number of people from any number of galaxies can get here and go home in the same day. And so that when you think about those kind of numbers of that kind of population that has access to the Earth, which is by far and away, obviously, they condition us to not think that. So when you start thinking about those kind of numbers, and you think about instances like how one UFO ET story can differ from another, now when you think about those kind of numbers involved, it all makes a little bit more sense. Before going into my own story, I know you wanted a synopsis. But,
yeah, that's actually perfect. Yeah, I've encountered a multitude of different races myself, just on a psychic level. A multitude of races that want to talk to me and tell me their story. And also, people forget there's a multitude of both positive and negative races too that show up here. It's not just one set. I've encountered multiple ones that want to either talk or try to stop me from talking about something. So that I'm glad you brought that up, Tony. Thank you.
And then the other thing that we are also conditioned. You got to think every story you ever saw on television or read a book, or every story has a good guy and a bad guy. We are very conditioned to think that it's a good or an evil. that when you meet somebody that and matter of fact, a lot of people, when they meet somebody new, are looking in that first weeks of knowing somebody new, they're looking to see, are you good or bad? When the truth is, we're all our own mix. There are some people that are very bad people, but for the most part, people are kind of having their mix, and you catch them on a given day. I know I can speak for myself. If you catch me on a given day, I'm kind of a jerk. I can be a jerk. And then you catch me on a great day, I try to maintain and be a good person as much as I can, as much as the next man. So the race, when you talk about species, every people go, like, those are bad guys. They're not. They're good and bad, and so are we. I always try to tell people to kind of step away from that. There's a certain level of enlightenment, of advancement mentally, where once you get to a certain level, it's basically all good, because that's what makes the most sense. Because ultimately, cheating the next person in your own gains is a self-defeating philosophy once you get to a certain level. So that's how I feel the ETs were, and that's what I remember of them. That the really advanced ones were all the very advanced ones were all pretty loving.
Exactly. And it's really nice because people may not realize, but this is the first time we've chatted and you've not followed us. So what's really nice is in a synopsis, it's always nice when we hear people starting to say the same thing. You've actually said what we've preached and I hate to use the word preach, it's the only word I could think of, that we've been working on the lifting for the last few years, is to give people a broader perspective. It's even humanity. We're supposed to have all the emotions. We're not supposed to only go into, let's say, love and light, that positive. No, we're supposed to be reflective of an entire
whole spectrum of emotions.
Yeah. And be able to, within that, what is your normal presentation of yourself? And it is no different. I think when you talked about the programming early on, especially the programming of, if you're in a little bit higher frequency where you're not in our normal visual perception and you're maybe up here, you must be omnipotent and only good. And that's a part of the programming that's got to be a little bit undone as well. So I really appreciate everything you just said, because it's reflective of our beliefs as well.
So this might be a politically incorrect way to give an example of that, but people that have pets are very more advanced than you're very more advanced, I guess, mentally than your dog. And to your dog, most of the time he loves you to death, and you're just godlike, and you're a righteous thing. But every now and then you can have an off day and be mean to your dog too. And some people treat animals bad. Some people don't deserve to be near an animal or own a pet, because of bad behavior, because of upbringing. Just their life has led them to be hateful. So the ETs that are more advanced than us. I mean, I hate to say that we are animals to them, but some of them regard us as a lower species, to be controlled as a pet, not a pet, but yes, they regard us as a pet. So it's kind of that kind of mentality. A dog owner isn't a good or an evil person either. It's just where you're at in your day. I have my own problems besides my dog's problems. ETs have their own problems besides our problems down here that they have to worry about. And so it's a complex thing to talk about, and a lot of you just painting it good or bad. Is a great injustice. Painting anybody good or bad is an injustice. The worst people in the world had people that loved them too. And so I try to always stress that, because I find that there have been many different kinds of programming. Like I said, every story has a good and a bad guy, and that's A, it sells, it's a good read, but B, it's really not like that in the real world.
Yeah, my guides have always said that too. My guide Simeon always basically said, don't paint people as the hero or the villain, and also out there, people always think of the guides, like she said, like omnipotent, angelic, and I know my guide Simeon, he looks like a Native American, he's from the Pleiades. And he always tells me, it's like, oh, we're busy out here doing this. We can't always look after you guys. This is why we're showing you how to protect yourselves and teach you how to become more sovereign. So we're busy out here, helping out here. But now down here, you have to learn how to become that yourselves. And and he doesn't like it also when people are yes people to the galactics too, like basically praying to them, or like basically showing that they're more sovereign than humans. They don't like that. They don't like yes people. They want equals. They want people on an equal basis. That's how he explained it to me anyway.
People that think for themselves. And I've had this conversation with religious people that are, overly religious and think that they just give all their power to God or Christ, you know what I mean? And then that's it. They'll be fine. That somebody will take care of them. And I said, if you were God dealing with you, who would you want? Would you want somebody that's just say, hey, take care of me, I'll do whatever you say? Or do you want somebody that's going to go and handle problems and handle themselves as much as they can? And when they need it, say, hey, can I use a hand? Who do you want in your service if you're looking down at the problem, not looking up at it? And, clearly somebody that does the right thing without being told, that does it on their own, that doesn't sit around and just pray and then walk away from the problem is probably the better thing to do. I mean, without getting any kind of belief system, without endorsing or dashing a belief system, it's just kind of handle your own life and then things will work out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, we say, focus, do internal work, learn to protect your energies, because many people don't know that your energies are used for fuel, for other things. You have to learn how to protect your energy. You have to learn how to discern. You have to bring that skill back. It's not a new skill. It's a lost skill that has to be brought back. You have to be able to forget ideology of a speaker and discern the messages that are coming out of their mouth. So we always say discern the message and not the messenger, because they want to put you in that I either believe you or I don't believe you. They want to do the same thing. We call it duality. We've been in duality, the for and against, the good or the bad, the light and the dark. We've been learning about ourselves through that contrast.
And they've really reinforced it.
Yeah, who am I because of what I am not? But we're moving in a different energetic direction, new learning curriculum. That's what we say. We're going to learn how to get along better, more understanding. That's where we're heading. So we have to understand what we've been a part of to be able to move ourselves into where we want to go. That's kind of what we're all about, since we haven't really spoken before. But let's get on to your story. We could sit here for hours talking about this. I have a feeling.
I get that feeling, yeah. So me personally, I'm a normal person. I'm 47 years old. I live in Michigan. I grew up in southern Michigan, and now I live in northern Michigan. I unfortunately have 67 years worth of memories, however, and I did what's termed, and I guess it's been debated, the term, but it's most people call it a 20 and back, and it's a process that our government in secret space programs it's a technology that they've acquired that other species use, and it's very widely used across, I guess, the known universe for a life extension program. And it was and it gets abused and used improperly for slavery and for cheap labor. So when a planet like ours acquires the technology, they can essentially take people for 20 years, use them for elsewhere for labor or whatever purpose they deem fit, and then return them only a few minutes after they've taken them. So however that technology is used, with age regression, with their chemicals or DNA treatments, cloning, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know how it works. It felt like a cloning thing, but the experience was that you're taken and you go and live 20 years and then you end up back. And I woke up the next morning different person with no memory of what happened. And I had lived 20 years. So I was bottled back into a 10-year-old body. I was 10 years old and taken and did 20 years and put back. And then lived my normal life, which played out differently because I had been emotionally damaged with what I'd went through. So those years played out differently. And they say most people, I mean, without knowing the stat, but most people that go through that after the 20 years has passed. So in other words, if you're taken in 1980 and you go to 90 and 2000 and then back. So, and then you live those years again. So that's the direction the life felt. A lot of people think, well, you probably just did it at the same time, or you were dreaming it as somebody else. That's not how it felt at all. It felt like I had lived that time and was put back as, you know, I had tendencies of an adult, and I was put back into a child's body. After that 20 years, 80 again, then sometime after that is when people tend to get the memories back. They have a recall event.
Mm-hmm.
March, so it was the end of April. It was the end of April, May. The end of April in 2015, I was getting headaches, and I went to the doctor, and they said, let's just check it out, and they gave me an MRI scan. And about a week or two after that, I also came across the Randy Kramer information, and he explained the 20 and back stuff. So all those years, I had always had memories that didn't make sense, that I washed out. It must have been a dream or something. And when could I have done that? I had memories. You know, dreams, you don't remember how you got there. When you dream that you're walking down a street, you don't remember the car ride to the street. You just are on that street, you have the dream, then you go away, and that's a dream. I had memories. I could, in the memory, like felt like a waking dream. I could remember how I got there. I could remember showering. I could remember waking up, and I could remember going to bed that night. When I remembered events, so it wasn't a dream. But at the same time, I told myself I didn't have any memory of when that would have happened. When did I have time to have a career on a UFO? And so after I saw that, just like I said, April, it was the end of April, was the MRI. A week or two later, the second week of May of 2015, I saw the Randy Kramer stuff, and he explained the time travel aspect of it. And I went, oh my God, all that stuff I remember happened. And so once I accepted it, it was like, you know, once you accepted it was a memory, like a keystone, all the memories came back. Big chunks of memories. It was hard to process in the beginning. And it went on for a few months. The first months, just big chunks, years at a time of memory. And I wanted some help. I wanted some counseling. So I got and I knew I couldn't go through a conventional version of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got in touch with exopolitics.org, and I just wanted someone to talk to. And I ended up doing interviews about what I remembered and being studied. You know, they really helped. They really cross-examined me a lot, a few researchers, and they concluded that what I remembered did line up with what other whistleblowers had said. And I'm still getting that. And then I started doing interviews and went on. So it's been a few years. You know, that was 15. Here we are 4 years later. And that's basically what happened. But and to go through, if anyone's never heard, basically I was taken in those 20 years. I lived on Earth and went through like an MK Ultra program, mind control program, then a remote view program, and then used with a version of technology for psychic abilities, and used in drug smuggling. And if you wonder how they get away with it, they have little kids that they set up artificially to be psychic, and then that helps them smuggle drugs. And I did that till about puberty in the 20 and back, and then was taken and did a couple years as a privately owned slave that was like a sex service. I don't want to go too much into that unless you guys want to, but I outserved my purpose. I was about 16, I think, in those years, and then they were giving us pills every day for whatever reason, maybe like steroid or something, and they changed it, and I was allergic to it. And they said, well, if you can't take these, then you got to go. We're going to sell you to the military. That was the exact term they said. And I was sold off, and I was taken off-world into the secret space program. There was some time on the back of the moon. I was trained as a support soldier role, and then taken to Mars, where I was put on a forward base and did missions with Marine Corps Special Division people there. And that project didn't last very long. I was on Mars a total of maybe 6 months. That project failed and was canceled. And then I was retrained into ship maintenance. I was tested for aptitude and then retrained into ship maintenance and shipped off to the Ceres Colony Corporation, which is a German breakaway group from the World War II time. The Germans had broke away, and they set a colony up on the planetoid Ceres, which is Ceres, and it's just out in between Mars and the asteroid belt, a little small planet, a dwarf planet. And I lived there for the remainder of about 12 years, and worked as a maintenance tech on a version of a submarine kind of cylinder cigar-shaped, maybe UFO. I never really saw the outside of it, to be honest. And then that was decommissioned, and I was put on a bigger ship and promoted, and I was a cargo engineer for the last 2.5 years of my time up there, and then put back. And woke up the next morning as a 10-year-old thinking, feeling like I'd never seen my room in 20 years. I woke up and I forgot where all my toys were. I forgot where everything was. I went to school that day, forgot, and I asked the teacher, later in the day, can I go to the bathroom? She said, yeah, and I forgot where it was. It had been 20 years for me. That's how it was experienced. So, any question? You guys go from there. I guess that covers.
With this, I find it there's an interesting part of this. So I found out with, like what you said with the memories, 20 years to get the memories back, because it's following that parallel line. I found it has to do with quantum threads. I asked my guides, why do they come back in certain intervals and time frames like that? And it has to do with the quantum threads, with it matching up to what you experienced there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I've told people, I've talked to others. Now by now there are a host of people that have come forward and saying that they've been through the same thing, and they have a substantial amount of personal memories from the 20 years. There have been a host of people, and I've spoken to many, not everybody. And the consensus is that it's kind of like what you hear when people are twins. When one twin falls and breaks their arm, even though the other one is miles away, they kind of have an idea something's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Or one twin is heartbroken, loses a lover, and is heartbroken and depressed. The other twin kind of joins them in that, and the emotional load gets dispersed between the two. That is exactly what it was like during those 20 years. My time here on Earth, there were times when trauma happened, or something bad happened, or something good for that matter happened to me during the on the other timeline, and I could feel it, or I had an unexplainable depression out of the blue. And so it really was disruptive to my organic life, to my life that I've had.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people may think, because this happened to us, yes, when we were like, are we viewing another timeline? Are we viewing ourselves in another time? Because it feels, some of these little things, because you have no memory of it, and you're seeing something, you're trying to make sense of it. You're thinking, oh, I must be viewing another timeline experience or whatever, not realizing it really was within this lifetime. And if you string out how many years you've really lived, many people have lived many more years than they actually count their age to be because of it. And what I really liked about your particular story and what you were bringing out is you brought out something that is kind of a little bit near and dear to my heart, which is the fact that this is an enormous infrastructure. You can talk about being in space, but you have to understand that human beings were pulled into this, tricked into this, and their skills were used to build this infrastructure. And then once the infrastructure is built, you may need someone on Mars to run their McDonald's. So this is enormous. When we were trying to collect some information, we were actually kind of appalled to hear the percentage of people who may have been involved or taken. It's right under 10%. If you can imagine the population of the United States, you think about schools, you think about your top 10% of people with their knowledge, their potential targets, and many of this starts obviously where they learned it is easier to pull in children. So this starts, and this happened to, this did happen to both of us. And I do like a couple things you said, because I think they're clues for people. And I'll just use myself, I apparently was brilliant in math, brilliant. When I went to a school when I was in elementary school that was a learn at your own pace. It was totally different from an elementary school. And in second grade, I was sitting there with the sixth graders. By the time I got a little further along, they didn't know what to do with me. They literally gave me a ruler and said, go outside, measure this whole school and make the design. And that's what I was doing. Now, I laugh because I also had a German teacher, You know what I mean? And it was just really weird. This whole experience was really weird. The amazing thing is that some of my memories of being younger or being middle, but by the time I graduated high school, which was probably one of the times I was pushed back in, because I have a feeling we may have done more than 120 and back, I was like getting stupid. All of this brilliance. And then I was having problems in physics class. And then by the time I was a little bit older, I thought, what do I have? Early Alzheimer's? What's going wrong with me? And so I appreciate the fact that people, when they're saying they're having their experience, there's a change. And we try to say, unfortunately, they're not going to let you come back with your brilliance. They don't want a force getting together who could potentially, they're going to take some of that away if they feel it could be a threat to them. And it's unfortunate. So I appreciate, your story, because your story's all over the place with experience to try and show there's an enormous infrastructure with this.
So because I guess you would call it a benefit, as a benefit or an effect of the technology of taking somebody is that they can be very aggressive in their mission planning. So in other words, people are, when they take in a United States soldier and put them on a mission, the mission must be designed for that soldier to come home. They can't make an aggressive mission because that soldier has family that are voters. So, the tax-paying voters that as family. So you can't just throw their lives away willy-nilly. That much of the technology out there with this, you're talking about consciousness taking, transference, cloning. You're talking about holographic regeneration, healing technology that they've all acquired from extraterrestrial races that are millions of years old, probably. That, races that are much older than us, which have much greater technology. They've just traded and acquired it. So they can plan their missions far more aggressively. And as a result, people that go there are traumatized when they come back because there are technologies that can save you if you get hurt badly. And so a typical PTSD case down here in a war scenario is a different animal than somebody that goes through the programs. And a lot of the people that are in the programs get abused because, that's what they beat me over the head with when I was up there. There were times when they operated on me, I had surgeries that there was no painkiller, no anesthetic, because and I would say, and I would voice it, you can't do this. This is too wrong what you're doing. And they would just say back to me, like, you're not going to remember it anyway. So they just beat me over the head with that all the time. Whenever there was some kind of, inhumane treatment, they said, well, you're not going to remember it anyway. It doesn't matter. Logically to them, doesn't matter if people. So, thank God that I'm an anomaly, but there are many people like me that do remember. The other thing something that's unique to my experience compared to a lot of people that have come forward publicly is that I spent the first 6 to 8 years on Earth. Mm-hmm. And so I have a trail of places that was on, and this will bake your brain. Was I on Earth? I was in Seattle and in Peru. I lived there I lived in Seattle for a couple of years. Was I still back at the farmhouse in Michigan at the same time? How did that work out with the timeline? Were there two of me? And the truth is, I don't know. I don't have access to that kind of stuff, but I was there, and I lived the 80s twice. I remember the music, and I lived through the 80s twice, early 80s. I found the places that I lived in the 20 and back that I have never been, that I have my family as witness, that can say that I'd never been. I've never been to Seattle or anywhere out west all those years. And I still have never been to Peru. There's no documentation of me ever going to Peru. I just got a passport, and the only place I've ever been out of the country is Australia and Canada. So I have found the city in Peru where I lived during the first few years, during the drug running stuff. Mm-hmm. And when I found those places, to me, it sold it, because I didn't want to believe it when I first remembered everything. It was very far-fetched and these are my own memories that I really couldn't talk to anybody about. And I went online and I went on Google Earth and found that first I found the town in Peru, because I looked for it. And I remembered the flight path we did. And we always flew over the state of Acre from Puerto Tahuantinsuyo, Peru, across the state of Acre. They put me out like I said, it was a technology. And we were going to Santa Marta, Colombia. and dropping off cocaine, shipments of cocaine. So I found that, and I was blown away when it really was real to me at that point. So then I found the house in Seattle, and I went there the following. So this was 2000, April of 15 or May of 15. It was a month or two after that when I found everything on Google. But the following year in 2000, I think September of 16 was when I went. I took pictures of it, and I went to the home, and it's a gated house, but I knew my way around. I knew the roads. I knew the beaches. I knew the local store. It hasn't changed much. I even had the sensation of, wow, this is built up. That wasn't there. There was a gas station that popped up that wasn't there since back then. And these are all things that I really, if this wasn't real, I shouldn't have known. And that's something that's unique to my experience, that I spent the time on Earth, because I think I was shuffled through the back door. I wasn't groomed or taken. Most people on 20 and back are groomed for it and taken for one specific purpose. They're the ideal person for the job, to be a soldier or a scientist or whatever. They kind of shuffled me through as they just needed some extra bodies, and I fit the bill. And so I went through, and some other kids from my school were taken.
That rings true with me too. Just like I have memories of being a little kid, in Alaska. I've never been to Alaska. This version of me has never been to Alaska. And I remember being returned at the age of 8, going in the 20 back, and being returned at the age of 8. And when you described the sheet being put over, I actually have memory of something being stuck in my eye and having that put over me as well. And
they wanted the dominant eye.
Yeah.
It was a test, and they put the sheet there, and the sheet was to stop the bacteria in your clothes and on your body from infecting yourself, because they were a sterile environment.
Yes. Yeah, and I remember it being shoved in my left eye, and the way I remembered the thing with the eye is that with the left eye is my dominant eye, and I always kept feeling like I had something stuck right here in my eye, like right in the corner of the tear duct, like what you were describing, thinking, why am I digging this part of my eye? Well, quantumly, I was still feeling the thing stuck in my eye. I was starting to remember, but also on a quantum level, I was getting that residual of that actually taking place. So I was constantly rubbing that part of my eye, going, why am I feeling this sharp thing in my eye right here? And I actually do remember that, but also hearing you speak on one of your interviews, it started to put some things on more of a linear memory scale for me. Like, I grew up in Illinois, in the Chicago area, and I went to a Catholic school. And I had memories in a dream come back to me earlier on, before I heard yours, where I was dealing with a couple of nuns that were trying to bring out people who could channel or bring like Jesus through, or bring the saints through and stuff like that. And one of them, ironically, was named Martian. Her last name was Martian, ironically enough, which I don't think that's an accident. But she was trying to question who was coming through me. And it ended up, who was coming through me slipped with some reptilian language instead of English. And so she started to realize, hey, this is not saintly, this is alien. And these beings came in and actually said, okay, you figured this out. You have a choice. We can actually take the whole school full of children, or we can just take one floor full of them. And I actually remember this, walking down the stairs from the second floor of the school down to the first floor. Some people were all huddled on the second floor, were scared of what was going on the first floor. I walked down there as a little kid, just before the age of 8. I walked down there, and I saw Sister Martian in the gymnasium, and she was basically saying, "No, Christopher, you have to go back upstairs." Creepy ether there. All the children were gone. Everybody was gone except her. Every human on that floor was gone. And I remember going back upstairs, and that's when the whole thing where I was visited, taken to all the way to Alaska, had the sheet put over me, had the thing put in the eye. And that's what happened, is I had witnessed something I wasn't supposed to see, and they grabbed me from that point. They were hoping people would have stayed up here, but I was curious, had to walk downstairs to see what was going on. And I started to put those dots together. And when I heard you speak, I started to put them on the timeline. as to exactly how I was taken out, the origin of the whole 20 and back, in which I experienced.
Typically, the original event of being taken doesn't get fully erased. So they can erase everything. When they do the blank slating, I guess that's another term I could get sued for if I say it. But when they do the blank slating, that's what I never forgot that the very first 5 minutes or 10 minutes of the event. That I woke up the next day and still kind of had a fuzzy memory of that. And months later, I had remembered it. And so that was something that I always remembered my whole life. Just the original waking up with a gray in my face. That was something that I never forgot. That was my kind of breadcrumb to the rest of it for the rest of my life. That something happened to me that wasn't supposed to happen. That didn't make any sense. For what you just told me, things I'd like to figure out the year, a timeline, and put the year of events, because when you can put years to it, then you can really get a lot of data from other people and their timelines, because that shows what the programs were up to during those years.
Okay.
Like when I was taken in the beginning, it was the infancy of that whole drug running thing that they were doing. That was kind of a one-off, and that was an early thing. I traced it back to CIA funding for some projects that happened out in California back then.
Okay, yeah, mine would be around 1988, actually.
Right. So I was first taken in 83. I'm sorry, 82. It was 82. It was the school year from 81 to 82. And so that put me from between 9 and 10 years old. And I've later on figured it out that the science fair was going on in my school, and that was around April. I want to say around April of 82. So that it was that night or the next night after that science fair that I was taken. But the other thing I would say is you need to go to Alaska, and you should take somebody with you, because what happened to me, which was a huge mistake, is that I couldn't have anybody go with me. It just, I was flying through, I was kind of on my way from somewhere back to Michigan, and arranged to stay in Seattle for a night so that I could go and explore the home that I remembered. That's how I ended up going there. And I didn't know, nobody was available to go with me. And if I would have had someone go with me, it would have been, I was calling out what was coming up down the road before I got to it. Like, what I mean? I was exercising memories that I had there. Like I went to a beach that we had been there during the 20 and back, and I knew my way around the beach, like what was up around the corner, but there was nobody there to tell that to film it. So you should plan a trip and go find, if you remember a place specifically, you should return there, and you should take somebody with you and possibly film it, because that's probably the experience you're going to say. You're going to go, up behind these trees on the left, there's a bunch of giant rocks. And then you'll be able to film that. And that's proof. I mean, come on. How do you fake that? I mean, if you've never been to Alaska in your life, and you've had people in your life that can testify to that, say, yeah, I know he's never been to Alaska. And then you go to Alaska and have intimate knowledge of certain areas. That's going to be a very huge thing to disprove for skeptics. And I welcome skeptics. People should be skeptical of any of this. The only thing I can be certain of, Seattle was real, and I remember years of Seattle. Peru was real, but I haven't been there, but I remember years of that. And I can be certain that I was put through some form of brain blender. Like I was put through a program, a process that screwed me up and made me forget things and altered my behavior, and on and on. But it happened in one night. So there was a 20 and back, exactly how others describe it, of being taken and being returned the same night, maybe only a few minutes later. I woke up the next morning and got on with my life. And so, but that time that I'd lost was a great deal of time. It wasn't just overnight in a laboratory. And so other people are going through that. And that's something very important for people to get their head around, because they have used it. Humans have acquired the technology from ETs, and it's been abused.
Absolutely.
Oh, yes.
And you said a few things that I just kind of wanted to add to that discussion. One of them, unfortunately, is I don't think you're unique at all. I just think your type of experience, because most people are remembering because they can logically have the mission or something. But unfortunately, like I said, this infrastructure is so big. You think of the were you even a part, older people, were you even a part of putting the infrastructure together? You may have weird memories. I actually have some very weird memories being on Mars in a construction times. The way you even used the bathroom was very unique. How you pooped here and had a little package, and over here you put your urine in a hole because it's going to filtration down. It's weird stuff.
Mhm.
And while things are being built, and then you think about that part of it. And again, like I said, I have memories of people moving into a place. It reminds you of just a big move. You're moving into new quarters, but it's this underground train taking even families, kids, everybody's going now to this new place. It's very interesting memories. So you've got entire families that were potentially involved, and or lineages of families, because they look for certain lineages of be it genetics that's important to them, be it brilliance in certain areas, and they would do all areas, don't just think math and science. So all areas. You could be very spiritual, and they're going to use you in that method as well. So it's huge. But then you also think of, this is what's really hard for people to think. We're not actually, again, we said this earlier, where you have people with a broad spectrum. Some days you're nice, some days you're not nice. But there is a culture over there with the people that are in charge. And in general, you would not label that culture as nice. You really wouldn't. It's top dog. We're the best. You are peons. And
Right.
You have to maintain that infrastructure of domination and control through all kinds of mechanisms. The sexual part of it, many people were involved in that, because that sexual energy is energy that was utilized for another purpose, to potentially feed others, give things away. So what I, again, found interesting about your story is the fact that you really were able to put it all together, because I think an experience like yours, where it's here, it's there, it's this, it's that, it's not the mission, is some of the most common, because so many people were taken for all different purposes, but it's the hardest one to try and piecemeal back together. So that was my first comment. No, I applaud that you've done it. And this is my concern. My concern is people having memories come back, and what is it doing them? The other thing you said that maybe we can talk a little more about is behavior. Because when you're over there and you are put through what you're put through, the programming over there, and everything, they're going to split you a little bit, and you're going to do things that you want to blow your brains out. If you knew you did it over there and you did it here, your moral compass here would want you to kill yourself over some of the things you were involved in.
Everybody had a different set of morals up there.
Yes.
At least when I was on the Ceres colony, when I lived there, everybody had a completely different set of morals. I wanted to touch that. So when I say mine was unique, is that I mean unique with the people that have stepped forward.
Yes.
Most of the people that have come forward have said they were taken on a 20 back and they spent the whole time in space. Where my 20 and back, I had Earth time. I know that there's been plenty more people that had Earth time, and you never know. You could bump into somebody on the street that's in a 20 and back. See, we don't know.
Exactly.
The other thing about the infrastructure is that it was old. The Ceres colony was old when I got there. When I got out, it was a train basically that went into a tunnel and portaled from Mars. Flash of light when the train went into a tunnel. There's a flash of light. The train stopped immediately. You got off, and I was on Ceres colony with a bunch of Nazis. It was a German military, and but it was old already. The roof was rusty. It was like the corrugated roof, kind of, in a hangar bay right outside where the train station was the first place that I went, and they were having, like an orientation go on there. And I remember looking up, and it was old. It was rusted. There was rust, and there was dents, like things had fallen on it, on the ceiling. And I thought, this isn't that advanced. They said, this is welcome to the most advanced colony in the solar system, is what they said over the loudspeaker when we got off the train. And I remember thinking, it wasn't as nice as Mars. And Mars had, in the city where I went, I did training, and that's where I took basically classes and my aptitude tests before to learn ship repair. They had advanced bathrooms. So a few other people have said that too, but the bathrooms there were like super advanced. The toilet thing, the water and everything. And I remember when I went to Ceres colony, I was disappointed that it was back to the old deal. and it was old. Where I lived on Ceres Colony and the shower system, it was all very old construction and in bad shape. I mean, they maintained it, but it wasn't. It was an eyesore. That stuff where I was. It wasn't until you got out into the city where you saw anything that was kind of futuristic, like what we would have considered back in the 80s futuristic looking, which was basically flat screen TVs everywhere, see-through TVs. There were all over the place and neon lights, and then ETs. There were ETs that visited, that walked around on Ceres Colony. They entertained guests very often, and they were trying to court them for trade deals, because trade is the big deal up there.
What were some of the aliens you ran into up there? What were some of the races?
Well, there was a full-time. There were two species that were full-time, and this is another one of those things I have a hard time with: street names and names of the races. They all had like, when you say your friend was Pleiadian, well, the Pleiades is a big place, and there are many different species that live there, and so, but I don't remember any of their names. I don't, and many of the stars that we have cataloged here, I don't believe have the same names to the space program up there. Like, when we look at a star and we get the name of it down here, I think in the space program they look at the same star and they have the actual real name of what those people call it. Yeah. And so I don't remember those. It's hard for me unless I hear it from somewhere to get to freshen the memory. It's something I've forgotten. It was like 36 years ago for me, or 37 years ago when I got back. It was a long time. But anyhow, there was most of the businesses, I want to say all of the businesses ran there. Any restaurant, kind of store, there were brothels, there were strip clubs, there was a red light district. Any kind of other shop that was set up had a large, like a 9-foot tall with an elongated head species. They had hair. They had really wide hips and strange portions to them, and they had lower gravity where they were. So the Ceres Colony was a small planetoid, so the gravity was very low. So they had artificial gravity plating, and it went for miles. It went for miles and miles of powered flooring that created gravity for about 30 feet, and it was artificial gravity. So there was gravity plating that was it felt the same as here, as Earth. But that particular species, those 9-footers, they didn't come from our gravity. They enjoyed lesser gravity. So where they walked, the floor would lower the gravity. It followed them. They had like a piece of jewelry or something that let the system know. And everywhere they went, they had lower gravity. So I remember people saying that they stood next to them and felt the lower gravity. And then most of the technicians were about a 7-foot tall race, and they had bigger. I want to say bigger eyes, but I don't remember their faces that well. But they had straight hair. They had hair when it was always straight, different colors. They had red hair, blonde hair, and black hair, but it was always super straight, and they had longer hair. And they were typically about 7 feet tall, and they were the guys that serviced all the engines on any of the smaller craft, or even on the bigger craft in the hangar bay. You'd see them, and I'd run into them in town. And I think they shared our gravity with us. They didn't have that lower gravity situation that the 9-footers did. So other than identifying them by their height, that's all. I don't remember their names, which is a tragedy. But I don't remember any names from up there. I don't. There's a few names, ship names I remember. I'm trying to work out the word in German for the first ship. It was something like lightning horse or lightning bus. It was something like that, and it was a cool name. But I haven't I haven't figured it out yet. Like I keep trying to remind myself and figure out what the name is, but I'm not sure yet. And then the second ship, because the naming of the process took so long, the ship was in dock and we were learning our jobs for a few months, and we were anxious about the naming of it, and I used to tell friends of it. I had a girlfriend, and it was the Max von Laue. That was the name of the ship. Ceres Colony Gesellschaft Max Raumschiff Max von Laue. That was the name. Was a long acronym for it, and that was my second ship, which was way more modern and I guess more Star Trek-y than the first ship I was on, which was more like a submarine.
Oh yeah, I have memories of being on. Most of the ships I was on were more like submarines. Had the rivets and the bolts and all that. There was one I was on that was a perfect like rectangle. It's like if you took a cube and pulled it out. It was just a complete box. The outside didn't even have, it was smooth walled on the outside. The interior looked like a submarine. That's one of the ships that I was on, and it had humans and aliens serving on it. There was I remember even a half reptilian, half human, commander that was on board the ship. You could see the scales around his eyes and everything.
A lot of pilots were reptilian. I remember there were a lot of pilots that it was a reptilian that did that job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember the one I encountered. He was extremely aggressive. He didn't like me very well, and he took it. He constantly would either taunt me or flip me off or do something like that. He wasn't very fond of me, and the rest of the crew didn't really like him either. And I remember this guy tried to beat me up one time, and I remember going into like a weapons locker or something, grabbing like a cattle prod sort of thing and zapping him in the chest with it and knocked him out. And the next thing I knew, I'm trying to drag him towards an airlock, and the rest of the crew's like, no, don't do anything to him, don't, as I got sick of him taunting me, and it was just, I got pissed off at him, so him beating me up was like the last straw, so I went after him.
A lot of, again, this branches off into a different thing, but when we're talking about a post-disclosure world, it's not going to be as rosy as people think.
No.
A lot of species that they're very territorial, and that's not the language. They don't speak the language of etiquette that we do. A lot of them, like he was mad at you. He treated you because you were speaking a different form of etiquette to him that insulted him.
Mm-hmm.
And they have a different form. Like if you probably early on in your interaction with them would have stuck up for yourself more aggressively than you ever would, because you're not that kind of person. I'm not either.
Mm-hmm.
But at the beginning, if you would have been more challenging to him, then he would have respected you and let you be.
Oh,
so but that's their etiquette, and they have that's an ET race from their planet has every right to behave how they do. And we're going to run across, once we disclose and once we have access to a database of species, we're going to see a lot of things that are going to be appalling to us. And people are going to have to just put on their pants and be grown-ups about it.
Yeah.
Oh, exactly.
Well, that's what we say. Put your big boy and girl panties on and get ready, but don't go at it in fear, because this is part of the reason and people hate this. We say we're not going to move that quickly into this, because there's a lot that humanity has to be ready for. Because again, if it's been pumped into you that anything above you is omnipotent and benevolent, and this is law,
right,
you're just going to want to go and kill yourself, jump out the window when you really find out what it's like. Now, does it mean it's all bad? No, it doesn't mean that at all. It just means, and we always say deny the known. That's another term we like to use, because you have to be ready for the expansion of knowledge and give up some of your previous belief systems to be able to handle what's really going on. But it's not our doom and gloom. Humanity's not going into doom and gloom. Humanity's going to expand as it's ready to be able to go out there and do all that. But I do want to touch one thing on behavior, because, again, I have a healthy concern for everybody, because there is no way they can stop these memories now from coming through. The energies that are streaming in are breaking that down in people. Their infrastructure isn't as strong as it used to be able to go around and keep people from remembering, because basically they go around, AI would even go around looking for people who were remembering and then try to dampen that or change a memory or do something that people would think it's a dream and not real. But the one thing, as we've said earlier, is that emotion. So you can't help. Emotion tends to trickle through maybe even first. So if you were put through a program where now you were trained to not care as much for another person, and you were in that culture where everybody judged everybody, my God, if you weren't at the top of the totem pole and you were down here, you were laughed upon, picked upon. It was really ugly. What I tell people, and we always say, is know who you are now. Who are you? So that you can contrast it to maybe some of these thoughts that are coming in that are contradictory to it. So if you consider yourself as, I like people and I'm not judgmental, well, why are you spending all this time being so hard on other people? that may be a conflict of for some people, especially if they realize they were back there, of how they were programmed to be back there versus who they really are. And you have to, that's going to have to be dealt with, and some of this stuff is slowly going to have to be let go, so it's not currently interfering in people's lives.
Mhm.
And that's a pretty big deal to me, because I think people see a lot of their own personal conflicting behavior and they don't understand, but they have no idea what they really were put through back there.
Right. You're talking about people that have been through the program. Well, and the other thing is, I mean, for the average Joe, for people that have no contact, they've lived their life from A to B and they're doing well in our system, and they don't want to, they're not, people that are doing well in the current system are going to resist any kind of, not only change to the system, but any kind of criticism to the system. And when you introduce extraterrestrial civilizations to the system and say, guess what? You've been living a lie. And we all have for the last 10,000 years or how X amount of years. It's going to be a big shock to people. And people are going to, the other thing that a lot of people do, they've created a lot of scarcity for us with the finances. A lot of people put down other people to make themselves feel better, which doesn't work. But a lot of people think that they're better than somebody because somebody has a different etiquette or a different thing, and you see it all the time. People will bond by picking on somebody in a group, a new group of, 10 people. They'll find somebody that's they'll find any reason that's different from the whole of the group or the majority of the group, and they'll exploit it and they'll make fun of it and taunt it, and that bonds them together, saying we're all the same, we're on the same team. This guy's a loser. Look at me dressed as like a dummy, and they'll go. That's where you get that kind of preschool behavior. So that's going to be on steroids when you're talking about ETs walking the streets. When you're talking about somebody that's not only behaves differently, but somebody that looks differently, talks differently, everything. When the differences go from just being a different race, a different color, to form of racism, or just a group that's picking on somebody because they're wearing some cheap shoes.
Hmm.
You get a group of people with that mentality, and now you throw an ET that portaled here. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's what we've been honestly told, that disclosure actually is happening now for those that are ready for it. It's happening
to get their head around it.
The back channels. It's not going to be like what people think, where here's the announcement on the Washington lawn. It's not going to happen that way. The governments are going to have to end up agreeing when it's just such common knowledge out on the street that they finally decide, okay, it's such common knowledge, let's now agree that it's not going to happen the way that people want. And it can't happen because the chaos that would ensue if something like this happened would actually benefit those who feed off of the negativity and that energy. So there's this really big balancing act that has to do with, because people don't even understand that concept. People feed off your anger. Beings feed off your anger. They feed off these energies, so they want to keep you in those states so they can keep feeding off the energies. People have no clue what's really going on. So disclosure has to be done in a balanced way, to not tip the scales, to allow for more domination and control from those people who feed off those energies. It's a very complicated subject.
I think they have. Well, the other thing is disclosures happened before many, many times on many different worlds. So there are advanced ETs that have a good read on what's going to happen. I think that most people can handle the truth. I think most people handle uncomfortable truths every day, and so I think as a whole, the people that haven't really swallowed everything, your skeptical people, are they going to be the ones that do the best with it? Because they're not going to trust it until you're going to have to show it to them a little at a time. I think people that have swallowed the hook, line, and sinker of how the world is, and they can't wait to go back to the shopping mall and throw on some name brands, I think those are going to be the people that have the hardest time with any kind of systemic change to their reality. They're going to find out that all the money and the material stuff they've been chasing all along really isn't as important as the knowledge that exists out there and the life experience of people that are interstellar.
Mm-hmm. So it has to be done in a balanced way, and that's what hard. I know that there are a lot of people who feel they have the broader understanding, and they get so frustrated with those that they feel are let's say, anchor waiting, holding them back. And I'm like, that's just not how it works. If you're really interested and you really want more information, that information is going to come to you. You're not being excluded. It's just not coming to you in the format. It's just like, people are having a lot more sightings of other races, let's say Sasquatch or whatever, other beings that may have lived here. It's starting to happen. People are starting to have their experiences. From what we've been told, honestly, the very first people that are going to be publicly acknowledged as races are going to look just like us. They're going to be some of from the Pleiades, some of the races out there that actually honestly are walking among us right now with their higher vibration, just trying to raise the vibration. The goal is not to scare people. The goal is to introduce it in a way that is a little bit more palatable and allows, and again, all of this is our expansion, guys. We're expanding. So we're going to expand into more knowledge, more experiences, and experiences that we'll learn to deal with and learn to handle. That's just how that's just how the energies are moving us. So.
Yeah, when I was up there, we did have guests that were exactly like humans that were just like us. That was, a great deal of people that visited, and they were from another planet. They were from another world their whole life, and everything was going on there just fine. But they were humans just like us. There were many, many, many places like that out there. So it makes perfect sense that those will be the first ones we contact with. It'll be easiest for people that are, I don't know the word, but I don't know a better word, but people that are prejudiced, people that are going to develop prejudice against a man that looks like a cat, or another race that's, or one of the reptilian races. It's not going to be easy for a lot of people to get their head around the reptilian races, even though they are ultimately people just like we are. Once you get to a certain level of development, a certain density of consciousness, you're talking about going, animals have a dozen words they speak, maybe a few dozen words. Humans have hundreds of thousands of words. I believe that higher density beings, there are humans that have millions of words that they speak, that their brain can handle. So, and that's the other thing, is we're going to have to get it also. We are not the top of the food chain. We are not the most advanced being. We are very advanced, and the human experience is wonderful and beautiful on many things, but it's not the end. And there is better things, there are better existences to aspire to. And that's really, we've been denied that knowledge and that aspiration. We've been denied that. And it's a big like kink in the hose of spirituality that they've stopped us here to say, this is it. This is where you can live this life, you go to heaven or hell.
Yeah.
And that's it. You're not going to come back as something better, or you're not going to, there's nothing else to aspire to. But the truth is, there are many, many greater existences than a human experience to aspire to be a good person, and to do the inner work, like you said, to do the inner work and straighten out your own energies so that you can move on to a bigger existence, a better form of consciousness after death, after you die. I don't want to go on record as a full statement of it, but I think that a lot of people have the whole ascension thing, like it's one day you're going to turn into a psychic being, and that, who knows, that could happen. But I think that ascension is part of this process of reincarnation, and I think you have to die and come back as a better being and live your whole life into your next ascension being. But I don't know, that's just kind of what my hunch is. I don't think that it's an overnight thing where we're going to turn. We might get an upgrade, but I don't think it would be very huge versus the reincarnation cycle, where you could just die and your energy and your consciousness come into a body right from the very beginning, right from the onset of its creation, to have those abilities, to have a better an upgraded body, like a fourth density being.
Yeah, I agree, because I've been told by the guides numerous times, and the channelings that I've been getting, saying it's not going to be this big poof. There might be, like you said, little little upgrades in their little, like the Lyrans like to call it a thought renaissance. But to us, it would be more of a grounding of certain information, certain information being disclosed to us, like it's more of a revelation sort of thing. And also, my guide Semyon told me that same thing. With certain revelations comes certain DNA unfolding. And if you would hit somebody that hard with that information, certain things would just overload them, and they'd turn into a vegetable pretty much. So with some people,
it is perspective though, because just like you said about time, you're 20 years older, really, in time. It's, from what perspective are you speaking? So there's a phrase that a friend of mine uses. I love it. She uses instant pudding. Folks, it's not instant pudding. And I love that phrase. Yeah. But if you are one of the galactics, one of the ancient races or whatever, watching us, knowing how many years we've been pushed into kind of a domination and control oppression, the expansion rate at which we're actually moving now in our conscious awareness is unbelievable to them. So to them, this looks like instantaneous. But they say, really, if we as a group and society, and I'm not talking disclosure right now, I'm just talking spiritual growth. If we actually all move, and let's say in 100 years or so, or 150 years, we're now all really got the handle on telepathy, that's an amazing amount of speed. And so so it's hard because from what perspective are you looking to say, is this quick or not? And then I wanted to say another point, but I think I forgot what it was there. But it's hard. So, sometimes to understand something better, I always say, if you don't understand something where you are, try to pull you back 50,000 feet and look at it at a different perspective, and you may gain a greater understanding. But in this process, one of the big things that we try to say is that a normal process of expansion for anybody, no matter what you're going through, is that you're going to go into a period of confusion, because you're going to be asking questions. What is this? Am I not seeing this right? What's going on? You will go through what we call a little period of chaos, where you don't even know what to believe. You don't even know what to trust. You're not even trusting the interactions you're having on a daily basis. And it leads you to clarity. And that is a process of growth that people are going through right now, as these, what we refer to as the energies, are shaking us up, changing our DNA, pushing some of the nooks and crannies and the dirts out of our system. And we go through this crazy process that actually looks like we're going backwards instead of forwards, but we really are moving forward.
Yeah. Right. I think so too. It's like there's going to be a certain amount of birth pains about it, and not everybody is going to be able to, I guess, make the same leaps and bounds. And and then thinking about it like this is something that I touched on. I look at little kids nowadays that are being born with I'm green with envy, because when they are my age, the world that they're going to be living is going to be so much, I believe, better off.
Oh, yeah.
They're going to be in such a better version of the world, like the same way that, my generation, we did the internet, that's another thing. Earlier, you were talking about people that would come forward back in the day. Like nowadays, people get their memories back and they can get it on the internet. It's recorded. It's too late to kill them or do something bad because everything's out already. So a lot of the internet has changed the of everything. But I just look at the kids nowadays and think about the world, that the possibilities of 47 years from now, from the kids, where we're going to be. It's certainly going to be a post-disclosure world. There's certainly going to be great advances that they're going to have to benefit from, and I'm kind of envious.
Yeah, so am I. I like the technology we have. For instance, I have memories of having better technology, computers that work properly, stuff like that. Don't basically fight you every time you get on them. I have memories of being out there talking to a computer, it brings up everything I want, I'm done within a few seconds, I'm on to something else. They're going to experience stuff like that. They're going to have better spiritual knowledge at hand, better technological, scientific knowledge at hand. So yeah, I'm envious to the next generation that are now going to be living in that Star Trek world. So I'm envious of that. We're kind of stuck in the trenches a little bit still here, but they're going to be out in the sunlight pretty much.
Yeah, and our understanding of the why. So why can't we have instant pudding? Why can't we do it like that? Is that, we actually are here to learn and grow. We're a higher soul. We experience it through this, we call this the DNA skin suit. We experience it through this operating system and everything, but you're here to learn and grow. Why would you want to be robbed of the experience of what it is to come out of what we call darkness into a more light understanding? The goal is we actually experience it, learn it, grow it, know how to deal with it. Why would you as a soul want to be robbed of what that means to move from one to the other? And I know it's not a very popular thought process because people are tired. They're tired. But it is our understanding of the truth that on a higher soul level, you're not to be robbed of the experience of learning and growing through this. So
Sure.
It's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I agree. Oh, I apologize.
No. So any other questions? Any questions?
No, we were just going to leave it up to you because we know you're in a time crunch. So any last words from you for this interview?
Just thanks. It was nice to meet you guys. I don't have a whole lot going on. There's going to be some other interviews, I think, that come out. And, it got to the point of critical mass where I was on Facebook a lot. And whenever I had an interview come out, people would contact me. And I was able to work with a lot of people, not a whole lot of stuff, but go back and forth with questions and answers and do that. And I've lost that ability. It totally got away from me. So I get in there and check my messages, but there's just a lot I can't keep up with.
Yeah, me too. I'm like that.
We're the
too,
same way,
yeah.
honestly.
So I don't do it as much anymore. So I apologize to anybody out there that ever messaged me if they see this. I try to promote.
It's hard. You're only one person, and that's what
right.
people are becoming more and more interested in this. And you start off with a small group, but once it expands, it becomes a little bit out of control for one person. So people have to understand that.
I didn't think it was going to turn into what it did, which was basically a full-time thing. I could do this full-time, and I just don't. I'm a normal person, and I haven't chosen to try to make this into a career. Like I said, people ask me, and so I'll talk. And people that do, and I don't feel it's my place to force it on people. Like people in my day-to-day life in the real world, I don't feel that it's appropriate to try to force, because anybody that doesn't know anything about the secret space program, for me to talk them into believing me, they're going to have to unbelieve something they already do, and that I don't think that's appropriate. So I try not to. But anybody that asks, I try to cover it as much as I can.
Well, thank you. We appreciate it. We were thinking, I don't know if you're interested in talking again. We were wanting to get, again, different perspectives of this topic. One of my big concerns is people remembering and what happens to them in their life as this process begins and how confusing it can be. So we were thinking about having another conversation down the road with a few people of that process, because we just want the information to be out there if someone's thinking they're doing it. I don't know if you're interested in joining.
I am interested. You know why? That's super important, and that's one of the main things that ever gets asked of me is how do I remember more? A lot of people, they have a few memories, they have a keystone memory or two, and they want to remember more. A lot of people, there's a few factors involved. Like in the 20 and back, at the end of my 20 years, I wanted to remember. I did not want to forget. And I know people up there that actively said they wanted to forget. They couldn't wait to forget what they had been through because, like I said, the lifestyle is administered far more aggressively than what we have down here because it's, it's like a bonus for them, for the administration. So people live a different culture. Like you said, things you'd be embarrassed of. So a lot of people want to forget. So then they get down here, they get back to their life. 20 years goes by. They start getting bleed through memories and they go, wow, I want to remember that. But really there's a barrier in their subconscious that says, no, you don't want to remember. And it's self that put that there. So a lot of people are up against that. And I found that with people that, people that remember the most are somebody that really wanted to remember. There was something out there they did not want to forget. So when they get here in years past, then, that was certainly the case with me. So that's one thing. The other thing is there are a few exercises you can do. It goes back to the basics. I think everybody should write down a timeline of events, not only for themselves, but to compare later. You can add to it and to compare to other people you might meet. Everybody should be carrying around a timeline. And then when you meet somebody new with this, you can whip it out and go, well, I was here when that happened. You can look at it in the years and go, I was here. Oh, no way, I was there too. And because that'll happen. So people should organize anything, any kind of out of place memory, good or bad, and they should organize it into a timeline form, and they should keep it somewhere where they can add on to it and refer to forever. There are some meditations that work, and mostly it's just self-care. If you're trying to get your memories back, you need to take care of your noodle, kind of eat the right foods and get off the junk and, clean up for a bit and get the right sleep, all that. I recommend that to people, and it's important. In my personal case, it was very therapeutic. I was fighting emotional problems. And you touched on emotions earlier. Those are the memories that stand out. The emotional memories are ones that I remember the clearest. The day-to-day grind are things that are hazy, faces and stuff that weren't emotionally attached to me are, not clear memories. But emotional things that happened to me, good things, bad things that inspired deep emotion, those are memories that are easy to access out of that time. So everybody has that. And so that's where you want to get to. But being able to, I had emotional problems after, the 20 and back. So being able to remember them has led me to be able to fix that. And it's been very therapeutic. And I think everybody should strive. If you have memories of a 20 and back or some kind of involvement, that you have any kind of problem, that remembering is a great form of therapy. Mm-hmm. So it's worth the effort.
Oh yeah, I always tell people that too. Even though there's some things, like Simeon would tell me for years, some things are better left forgotten. He was meaning some of the negative things that were going on, but at the same time, he was trying to get me to not be a yes person and go, no, I want to bring this back. I want to fix myself. That's what he was trying to get me to do. Well, I found out periods of heightened emotion back there, like you said, come through easier. Things that are more adrenalized come through easier. Certain memories that way come through much easier. I get the emotions long before I get the actual memory back. I get the full emotional state of like, okay, why am I feeling this way? And I'll sit and then figure it out. And then the memory starts to come flooding back after a while.
I think that might go to what you were touching on earlier, that how they feed on energies. Mm-hmm. That other things they're actually feeding on the emotions. That's the emotion is the energy that's generated by experience. And so that's, the memory is a secondary thing versus the actual emotion itself. So once you access those emotions of things, and most people have not experienced combat. So if they can get in touch with those emotions, that'll dredge up memories of a 20 and back. Any emotion, like if you're on a 20 and back, any emotion that's separate from what you've experienced in your normal life, the other emotions that are different. If you can get in touch with those emotions, those will dredge the memories up. It's a smaller data packet of the actual memory itself, of the visual, Mm-hmm. And so I think that's a big deal. And anybody that's been through it, it's hard to, I guess it's hard to explain, but anybody that's been through it and it deals with that stuff, knows what I'm talking about, that the emotions are a big deal.
Exactly. And that's one of my concerns, because that's what I feel is happening to a lot of people. They're having all these crazy emotions and what they would term imaginings. So they're having these emotion and these crazy imaginings. They're waiting for the diagnosis of the brain tumor to explain what's going on. But what's happening is we're in a time frame and an energy frame where multiple people are going to start remembering. So yeah, we want to hopefully here in the future, in a couple more months, bring a couple people on again and talk more about this, because we just feel so strongly. So many people are going to start to, if they're not already, they're going to start to experiencing it. And this is normally how it's brought in. So yeah, hopefully if you're up to it in the future, we can talk again in a few months.
No, that'd be great. I'd love to. Just keep me posted.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, great. And thank you so much. I think a lot of people are going to get a lot out of this interview.
Yes.
And we really look forward to talking to you again. So thank you.
Show me the link. When you put it up, I'd like to go ahead and keep an eye on the comments. I'd like to comment on the comments if I can.
Okay, I'll send you a link. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to. So thanks for having me. I'll get out of here. And it's St. Patty's Day.
Yeah.
I'm not wearing, and I'm
Oh,
not
you got
wearing
the green on your necklace.
Oh, yeah, I
I'm
got-
the one with no green on.
Yeah, I got
pink
green on the necklace. Yeah, so yeah.
I just want to keep you honest.
Yeah, got a piece of malachite I've been holding on to, so that's
There you go.
That counts.
yeah.
All right, you take care, Tony. We'll talk later.
Okay, I'll see you guys later. Thank you very much.
Yep,
Thank you.
bye-bye.
Bye-bye.